time to listen to me grind. Take down the film watchers and nerds on it.
Hello? Hello? I don't know what's going on. Sometimes, I think what happens is I was turning my mic off when I was coming in and like the screen just before now, because you could hear me like rustling around the microphone and stuff, and so I was like, I just turn it off. And I think I kept forgetting to turn it back on, so I've now produced 2 videos I worked very hard on, by the way, without sound. And that last one, that Jaylen Waddle one, now this one, we're going to talk about Jaylen Waddle right now. It was pretty good. I think it was really good. I think I was fair. I think I was balanced. I gave extra context. I gave some hints about where some extra signal might be that I haven't been able to delve into a lot. I think I killed it. And all you see is me going. And so I got to do it again. And I'm not gonna. It's not. I doubt it's gonna be as good. But there's no sound. It doesn't exist. I was just talking at myself. Fun. So, Jaylen Waddle is the subject for today. And obviously I hate him. I think he sucks. I don't want him to be good. That's where we're going to get to, right? The stuff underneath it is the stuff that I actually care about a little bit, which isn't the stand on a hill or make a take or be popular or have a good hit rate. It's just, look, at the end of the day, I know everyone's trying to sell you a line. Everyone. And I am too, I guess. Like, I would like to support myself this way. I'm not lying to you. Like, this would be great. I hate working multiple jobs that I hate. But I don't need to complain to you. But, so this would be a dream come true. But all I really am and all I have to offer is a guy who plays fantasy football who wants to make more good draft picks and less bad draft picks. And I define good draft picks as picks that either increase in value or increase in value and the player therefore increases in value, or scores me points above what I actually paid for them. So, drafting Kendrick Bourne hasn't really worked out because I've about got around points that I kind of expected where I was drafting him. But I can argue that he's a good player and stuff, but it hasn't hit. So that's why I'm not, despite being undrafted free agent, I'm not like, that's what you need to do to win, because it won't help. So far, it won't help you win. But I enjoy being able to identify good players who are going to be underrated, even if there isn't a large fantasy impact. And that's it. I'm just, me and you, baby, we just want to do better with our draft picks. So I don't have a horse in any of these races or a dog in any of these fights or whatever it is. If Jaylen Waddle is the best draft pick, I want to know that. And I don't care if film tells me that. I don't care if numbers tell me that. I don't care if combining both is where the signal is. I don't care if I have to read tea leaves or send smoke signals. If it works, I want to use that. I don't have I want to be the best numbers analyst, or film is better. I don't care. They can have their fun fight. And I will occasionally chime in with a sarcastic comment. I don't give a rat's patootie, I guess, is a word you could use on YouTube. I don't know. I just want to make more good draft picks and less bad draft picks. And I can't even sell you like I'm better at doing that than everybody else in the world, because I've met some really good fantasy players and some really smart people playing. So, I think I do better than you can expect just following a ranks list and stuff, and I can help build your own process, hopefully, and give you access to data, like the stuff in this video, for free, to help test and find answers for your own process. And that's been the subject of the last 2 videos I've done. Even the ones that were on mute. It's like, look, I don't even have the brains, let alone the time, believe it or not, to go through everything and test everything. I've tried my best, I keep trying, I keep doing more. But if you have a question I haven't answered, by all means ask. I love this stuff. I would love for this to be my stuff, this to be the way I make money. You ask me a question, I go find out the answer. Or I have the answer. But it's not, which is fine. But, like, if you have other questions, if you want to know something, like, it's not hidden anymore. It's not behind paywalls anymore. And in fact, it's not on 50 different websites that you have to go open up all the tabs and, do your own little work in a notepad or anything to figure out. Like, we put it all into one place so that you could go and look and find the answer. Like, who was it? Ryan. Ryan was asking me the other day on a comment on one of these videos, on this little chart that I do, who is a particular blue dot? And I did a video trying to answer him, and it was on mute. But I also answered it in the Jaylen Waddle video, and it was on mute. So we're trying again. And the dots I think he's talking about are the ones at the very top at age 20 and 21. One of them's DJ Moore, one of them's Demaryius Thomas. The answer is typically Demaryius Thomas. But here's the thing, because you know what's on the graph, because I label it. I try to label everything and write everything down, like in the column heading so you know exactly what it is, or like in the title of this graph that I'm always showing you. It's players from 2008 to present with at least one top 24 season and their market share of yards at each age. And the data is in the link, and I don't track Google links. Like, that's not going to be how I finally crack the market. And this is, like, just in case you're worried, I don't want to give this nerd nothing. I get nothing. And it's fine. I mean, I guess what I get is you have to go to Patreon and to click on the link. But, like, you don't have to pay to click on the link. And, like, some people do, and, like, I'm in awe, and I love them very, very much. But I don't even do it that way so that they will do that. It's because it's easier to maintain a link on a page that I control. Is that it? Like, no one can delete it, or move it, or hide it, or do mean things to it. That's why it's there. And you go through there, and it's just a Google sheet that you can download. Or not. Play with it there. I don't care. Play with whatever you want, But you could go and you could filter by players with top 24 seasons, and then you go over and you filter by year, and you go to the age section, and you can sort highest to lowest, and you can see exactly who all these dots are. Like, if that's the question you had. And not, Ryan, you asked, I'm happy to answer it to you, but I tried to do a video showing how you can find that answer, because I thought it would be a good in to finding other answers that you have. So why am I talking about this with Jaylen Waddle? Well, let me restart this thing again, because it's getting to be a longer video right now. Can I even? Yeah, let's loop it. Okay. 1 second. There we go. Start from the top. Why don't I like, and I would love it if it helped. That's the thing. I don't like or love anything. I just want to make better draft picks. Like, that's the core of me. But I'm evidentiary. I'm evidence-based, not hypothesis-based. Like, hypotheses are great. Let's not call it hypothesis, because now I'm trying to sound like a scientist. Obviously, I'm not obviously based. I'm evidentiary based, or evidence based. I don't know why I'm built this way, but every time someone poses an obviously type of reasoning to me, like, my brain can't churn through it. It, like, gets stuck in the gears. I'm like, wait, why would we run on to a conclusion based on a thing you just said? What's the reason that I should run forward with that statement? So what's an example? Points per game. It's obvious that if you do points per game for players that have not full seasons, you'll get a better idea of how productive they were, because they didn't play a full season, so their numbers aren't telling the full story, so per game it gives you more of the story. That's obvious, but it's not true. It's evidentiary, it's evidence-based, not true. Now, the biggest study I did on this was on College Dominator, because you kind of got to pick one stat, because if you start saying the same thing over and over again for multiple different stats, like, it's nerdy enough as it is, right? So I looked at College Dominator, and I did a very big study. Not like I'm bragging my study was very big. I'm just telling you, like, it takes a lot to find your answers, I know, and it's a pain in the butt. And I wrote it up, and then the website closed down. So I can't even show you that article anymore, although I am trying to revamp it and get it published on DLF, along with some others that were on that website. But what I found, and I can still show you, the data is literally tagged below me. You could go look. That's the part I don't get. Like, why would you just think something, assume it, and then make draft picks based on that when you could go look to see if it's true? Like, you could know now. You don't have to guess. You don't have to guess. Just in case no one told you. You don't have to make up a plan and then just go for it. Like, I'm going to rob a bank, and I assume the guard is going to be on lunch at around noon, so I'm going to run in there at noon. Like, you could go look the day before and see if he goes to lunch around noon. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, why don't we check the day before if there's going to be a guy with a gun in the bank? Instead of just running in and assuming, because obviously people eat lunch at 12. So, points per game is obviously the guy eats lunch at 12. And I'm saying when I went and looked, the guy don't eat lunch. He just don't eat. Sometimes he has like a little snack on his little chair, but he's still got his gun and he's still in the bank. And that's what the article said. Wait, where was I? Okay, so what I found is that if you do that to all players, not just the player that we're trying to bump up, because the stats look a little lower than we're seeing on film or whatever our process was pointing towards. DK Metcalf and AJ Brown lots of people thought they were slightly better than their numbers because they only played 1 year each in different years, and they still broke out. They still crossed a lot of thresholds. I still ranked them very highly, and I memed on Jake Anderson, my co-host at the time, who loved DK Metcalf, and he was absolutely right too, it turns out. But like, I liked being aggressively. Always wanted to be opposed. I wanted us to have fights, even when we agreed. So yeah, I own myself there, but. And those two players are a good example of how their stats weren't saying exactly how good they are, you know? And they don't even. But anyway, we're not going into those two profiles right now. But those are two good examples of why you might think, obviously, per game would help. And I get it. I do. So let's look. And I did. I went and looked at College Dominator, and I did it to everyone. Because here's why points per game, just for one player, does a way you can think about it being not fair. You're not saying, I'm looking at this player's points per game because he didn't play a full season. What you're essentially doing is I'm taking the best 6 games, or however many he played. Jaylen Waddle played 6 in his last year. And best 6 games he ever played, and saying that is how good he is. Because we're just going to essentially double him up until we get to a full season. That's what points per game, or College Dominator per game, does. It doubles everything up. It projects it out. It's an on-pace stat. Like, you score 3 touchdowns week 1, so you're going to score 48 by week 16 or whatever, because you're just going to keep scoring 3 touchdowns. And that's essentially what per game is. Now, I don't actually know, because I don't know how to test optimization, but Matt Spencer is currently writing an article for RotoViz. He gave me like a link to it as he's working, because he wants to know how a moron, like, he wants everyone to be able to read it, and so he figures that if I read it and understand it, then everyone will be able to understand it. So I really appreciate that, Matt. It's a really interesting article, and he's testing optimization. Now, why did I go off on that? Because what that means is he's looking for where per gaming is fair. Do they have to play 8 games, 9 games, 3 games? What is it before per game actually more accurately describes what they actually were? What's the threshold? Now, I think it's around 6. We'll have to see what Matt says. When his article comes out in RotoViz, it will be one you should read. Like, he's an actual smart person nerd. Fake. Very, very, very upfront about that. I'm a fake nerd. Okay? So Matt Spencer's article might have some answers for us there, but I think 6 games, based on just familiarity with the data, is where a season becomes fair to have some judgment on what a player was doing that year. But that's an obviously, to be honest, So mostly my statistics and models just kick out any season that a player didn't play more than 6 games, because I'm like, I don't know if I can judge him on that. But I don't per game it. Why? Because what I would be doing there is saying these best 6 games I'm going to project out. Right? I'm going to double count it all. So instead, what I did when I looked at College Dominator on a per game basis, I did everyone. I per gamed everyone's stats, and what happened is it made good players we know are good, Calvin Johnson, all of them, look worse because they mostly didn't get a benefit from the per game stat because they played full college seasons, and it made a lot of bad players who didn't play much or didn't have many games registered look good. And so what it did is it made it less useful. It created this cringe where, yeah, DK Metcalf and AJ Brown came up, but those are actually not just the two, they're basically the 2 examples. And they were at least able to cross they both broke out. They both had good numbers when they played a full season, and so they didn't look bad. Again, I memed over Jake, but like once we dug into the profile, you could see they did very well. It wasn't like we didn't know that. It was just, I wish I'd seen more of it, you know? So there was some extra, but I think that's fair. Like, it's fair to say we don't to have a few more questions about DK Metcalf and AJ Brown than the other players in that draft class who we saw play more often. We saw them play, we saw them do it more and repeat it more often. So we can have more confidence that they were good. That's not, well, we need to fix that. That's just, unfortunately, life is not easy. Unfortunately, life isn't consistent for everyone, and so you have to... That's as far as we can get. That's why I was posting the other day. I said on Twitter, it's okay to like a player just because you like the way he looks on tape. I wasn't memeing. I haven't been kidnapped. Like, if that's the reason, start off from a point of honesty. That's evidentially basing your opinion. It's, I looked, I watched, I like what he does. I think he's good. That's an honest statement, and as long as it's honest, it's based on something, not a crappy obviously, and therefore we can move forward with that. Well, what did you see, Zach? What did you see, J-Mike? What did you see, Nick Whalen? Well, I like the way he gets off the line. That's interesting to know. We don't have that counted, so we can't compare it to others, but we can maybe talk to you about what other players you've seen do that. Like, did DJ Moore get off the line well? No? That's interesting. So he's not that type of wide receiver. No, he's much more a DK Metcalf. And we can build an understanding of what we're seeing, or what they're seeing, on tape that they like. We're still stuck in bad stats, low hit rate possibilities, but maybe they'll get draft capital, and then we'll have an honest and evidence-based understanding of why this player looked good to people who know their tape, or digital rendering of the games, or whatever they're called now. I keep calling it tape, and I guess it's not tape anymore. No one's got a VCR and stuff, but anyway. But, like, that's how you go. Like, okay, their stats are bad, fine, but they look good on tape. Let's talk more about that. I can't help with it. I'm not a tape grinder. I don't know. That's why the fact that there's a lack of tape grinders in Dynasty, there's actually... we always represent ourselves as a minority group. Everyone wants to be punching up. But when you look at Dynasty, there are a lot more nerds than there are good, proven tape grinders. Zach Reed, Ray GQ... Jake before he quit to just play golf, I guess. Like, they're actually the minority in the Dynasty community, from my, obviously reasoning, at least. That's my experience. I've met a lot more nerds. Travis May is a hybrid between both, so I'm just going to call him a nerd too. Anyway, so the points per game thing doesn't work, because you're essentially comparing the best 6 games to everyone else's good, bad, and average games. So instead, if you wanted to do an even comparison, you would say compare Jaylen Waddle, or whoever's best 6 games, to everybody else's best 6 games. Now that's difficult because I don't collect week-to-week data, but you can see how that would probably make him still look like he's not as dominant as Justin Jefferson's best 6 games, and DeAndre Hopkins' best 6 games, and Demaryius Thomas's best 6 games. Like, if you just take the best 6 games, everyone's going to rise in a curve, and so that's what I did with College Dominator per game article. I went and did it to everyone. Now I can't go weekly, so I just per gamed everyone. And unfortunately, when you do that, good players look worse, bad players look better, and basically you're saying, I want to believe that per game matters for this particular player, but only in this particular player's case. So what I'm doing is making up a number because there is no proof, because when you do it for everyone, it removes the value of that stat because good players look worse and bad players look good. And so I'm making up a number that there is no evidence for it mattering. When I per game everyone, essentially the numbers that I create don't tell me if a player is good or not anymore. So the evidence says that this per game number I specifically created for this player that I liked, for whatever reasons, because I haven't mentioned them because I'm too busy making up numbers, doesn't matter. I've made up a fake number, I'm calling it the same thing as the other number, and I'm telling you to believe it. Obviously, per game, I'm not saying it's intentional, no one's lying, because it makes sense. But I'm saying when I went and looked, it doesn't work. It makes the number that you create meaningless. And College Dominator isn't entirely meaningless. And Dominator isn't entirely meaningless. It has value, it has signal. But when you per game it, it has no value. It has no signal. It doesn't help evaluate prospects because it's an uneven comparison. So, Jaylen Waddle's last season looked to be, and I'm not dinging him for not, like, I don't have a dog in the fight. If he's good, I want to know that. It's just, he didn't play enough. He played 6 games, I have to throw it out. I can look at that last season, and frankly, when you don't per game it, it looks lower than everyone. Obviously, as his graph on the left of me here suggests. But what if we per game it? What if we per game it? We're creating a fake number that has no signal or value, because obviously it matters. But evidentially, it doesn't matter. That essentially doesn't help tell us who players are if we do it in an even manner. It just sounds better because this player looks good. Now, the case for Jaylen Waddle resides in tape. And I'm okay with that. I don't know why anyone would think it has to be both or one thing or the other, or you have to have numbers, or be so unsure of their tape evaluation that they would want to fake a number to justify their tape. Like, numbers don't justify tape evaluations. They have access to different parts of the information that aren't recorded. That's okay to recognize it's the same information, but tape can get you access to the stuff that isn't counted and we can't look at over here in this nerdy analytics section. That's okay. Like, why would you, if you think he looks good, so good on tape, that you think his numbers aren't telling a story and he should be a first-round draft pick and he's going to dominate in the NFL, you believe all of that based on what you see, I'm good with that. What I'm not good with is you thinking so little of your tape evaluation that you have to prove it in numbers that don't exist. I'm going to make up numbers because otherwise no one's going to believe my tape evaluation. I do. I believe you when you tell me that you saw something that was good. I want to talk to you about it because I want to know, what did he do that was so good? So on and so on. I want to talk about it. I want to know because I want to miss as well. But I am not okay with you making up a fake number to lend credence, partly because it diminishes the value of tape evaluation, which has value. You're essentially saying what Jaylen Waddle looks like on the field can't be trusted unless we make up a number to prove that it's true. And a number that, based on evidence, now has no value because we stripped it of its value through the process that we went through to create it. That's what happens when you look at the evidence for whether per game works when you go on a per game basis. Now, that isn't all of the Jaylen Waddle argument numbers-wise. It's also team score. That's where I want to get to. We create more fake numbers through the obviously reason. Obviously, he played in Alabama with obviously first-round draft picks, so that means his numbers don't tell the full story. Did you look? Did you look? You didn't, did you? Come on now. Not you watching the video. I love you. Keep watching. Thank you very much. Other person. Fictional person 1. Who said that? Did you look? Yes, it makes coherent sense. You're not talking gibberish. I get it. That the NFL thinks these players were great, and so there was talent there, and so maybe you get, squished. But did you go and look to test that? Or did you just assume, and therefore Jaylen Waddle is good? Because you don't have to. You're not a spreadsheet warrior. Don't worry, I did it. But then don't tell me I'm wrong, because I did it. Like, I trust you when you say he looks good on tape. Why do you not trust me when I go and look at the numbers and say no? I mean, it's okay. It's okay. You can trust that other things could look good. I mean, why do I have to defend your tape evaluation to you? Other person, not the person watching this video. You're a fucking hero. I love you. Other person, why do you care so? Why do you think your evaluation of Jaylen Waddle is so unvaluable and untrustworthy that you have to make up my evaluation or a numbers evaluation to justify it? Have some guts. That's what I would say to you. Also, I did go look. There is an interesting trend, by the way. Players playing in lower conferences or on worse teams seem to dominate more compared to their teammates, or a team adjustment. And I've got team adjusted stats in there if you want to take a look. And I've only been able to do a quick look because I spend so much time trying to argue that one number being higher than another means one number is positive and one number is less positive. Like, that's the level of discourse we can get to because I can't get some people... I spend most of my time having that argument. Like, this is higher and that's better than this. Well, yeah, but this doesn't mean he's better than this guy. No, it just means that this is more positive than this. That's basically every numbers argument I have. That doing this better is better than doing this worse. Not that it's everything, not that it's a whole story, just that one number being higher than another means one number is higher. Like, we can't even get to even a two-facet piece of process where we say, okay, they're playing on a worse team in a lower conference drafted by the NFL. I can't even measure which teams are good and bad because I haven't created a team tab because I'm too busy arguing that one conference having a higher number is better than one conference having a lower number. So, what was I talking about? There's actually an interesting trend in the data where teams like from the ACC Coastal or from like DeAndre Hopkins's division, let's put a number on it, he was much more dominant compared to his teammates in his conference. Now, that I found that in the evidence, like I went and looked and I saw that players from other conferences that maybe, and I can't quite quantify that right, which is why I haven't written it up or made a big thing about it yet, but you can go and look too, because you probably know more about college than me, right? So, when I look and see bad and worse conferences, I find they're more likely to dominate against the team than dominate against a conference. Now, to make that make sense, not to come up with an obviously and then bend the numbers so they fit what I think, to explain the numbers that are actually true, I think that makes sense because if you're on a bad team, they're passing less, they're having less scoring opportunities, you get into the red zone less often, so on and so on and so forth. But compared to your teammates, you're in the same situation, so you are still going to be more dominant than your teammates if you're an exceptional player, right? That doesn't actually help out Alabama players. When you apply that same logic based on the brief amount of bit of information I've been able to glean from players from lower and higher conferences or lower and higher teams, that means if in Alabama you're not impressing compared to the conference average, you're on the best situation to do that and you're not doing well. That's not good. That's worse. So in fact, it might be an inverse relationship, or the logic of it, of the obviously, when we look and find out what actually happens on that team, might need to be reversed in that because Jaylen Waddle is in the best of all possible situations, pretend it is for a second, Alabama wide receivers, ooh, fancy lights and stuff, that's the best situation you could be in, even though we've only had 3 hits from that team ever. Anyway, and they were all very dominant, by the way, but anyway, Calvin Ridley, who else was it? Julio Jones, I think? I'm gonna look, because why not? This video is already longer and worse, it may as well be everything else. Alabama players, wide receivers. Top 24 seasons. Yeah, it's Kevin Ridley, Amari Cooper. That's the one I was forgetting. And Julio Jones. That's all 3, and all were incredibly dominant every year, and no one had any questions about the production. So Alabama adjustments didn't help prove, but this core is different. Got you. All right, where was I? So the fact that Alabama is a good school, lots of wins, lots of yards, lots of scoring opportunities, means that you should be more likely to dominate against your conference than your team. So actually, it could be possible that being on Alabama means you need the thresholds need to be increased rather than decreased on the team level, which would be the opposite of the obviously. Now, am I saying that's true? No. I'm saying we should go and look. Because when I look, and the other thing about team adjustments is, especially when you want to compare them to good players, and a real measure of what a good player is those who then go on to dominate in the NFL, which is an unfair measurement because life, the universe, and everything gets in the way of many people. So there might have been more good players on Alabama that just never flourished in the NFL because of lack of draft capital, because of personality, because of work ethic, because of life got in the way in some other way. So it's actually an unfair measure. But again, if you want to look at the team history of Alabama, we've only got 3 to compare it to, which means you shrank your sample size down to insignificance. So any numbers we find there are kind of questionable. Instead, if we look more broad at players that come from higher and lower conferences, what seems to happen is you're more likely to show up against your teammates than your conference, and that isn't true for Alabama players. So I think, actually, that's worse for Jaylen Waddle. But again, I haven't finished that research. I think someone smart should actually look into it, and I would need to spend a lot more time looking at it. But I can promise you this, I actually went and looked and then tried to explain what the truth is and try to, instead of assuming what the truth is, obviously, and then bend everything I find around to proving that the player I want to be good is good. Like, you just are never going to get me on board with that. And it's not because it's purer or better or you should be like me. It's because that's not the way my mind works. Like, I can't bend myself that way. Like, it gets stuck in the gears. I'm going to change what the world is so it fits what I believe. Instead, I would much rather talk about why he looks so good. And to be very clear, I am interested in Jaylen Waddle because everyone that I know and trust who watches tape says he's better than the numbers suggest. That doesn't mean I'm going to change his frickin' numbers to fictional numbers that I make up. One way or the other, they're made up, because if you applied it to the broader sample, it would mean all the numbers mean nothing, so they may as well be made up numbers. To change his production is what it is. His graph is terrible. His production is low. He was like third down the depth chart. Let's put this into a narrative. Jaylen Waddle has low production because in the 2 years that he played 4 seasons, he was getting targets taken away from him from Henry Ruggs, who was the lowest targeted and the lowest producing wide receiver below Jerry Jeudy. And who else? Shit, I've forgotten the name. Jerry Jeudy and Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith and Jerry Jeudy both look decent compared to past players that were good in the NFL. Henry Ruggs doesn't. Henry Ruggs is also the only one who's gone to the NFL of that group and looked like he's not going to be good for fantasy. Not that he's not going to be a good NFL player, not that he's not going to have a valuable role or the Raiders won't really enjoy having him there, or that he isn't a good person, or that he isn't exponentially better at football than 95% of the entire planet. Of course he is. But we're searching for fantasy players, and the one guy in that list that looked below, and I had to make a very stringent off the shore, I can see what you're seeing on tape when you look at his touchdowns argument to explain why anyone liked his tape. He's the one that's struggling to be fantasy relevant. And he's not struggling, he's not trying to be fantasy relevant. This is an us thing, not a him thing. So remember that. So, the player who was less dominant than we would expect for someone that's going to go on to the NFL on this particular receiving core, who is also the player who took opportunity away from this guy who is even less productive, is the one that's struggling to be productive in the NFL. It's only a rookie season, yes, but also the reason he looks less productive is because we have a 20-year history from multiple colleges and multiple conferences, and that seems to be what normally happens on average the majority of time. But teammates, see where you have to go all the way back to the start and have me restart the argument in order, like, it doesn't exist in numbers. And that's okay. And I don't know why I have to defend what you see. You should have confidence in that. I shouldn't have to tell you it's okay to like what you see, because it is. But that's where the conversation goes. That's where it has to come from. Because we can't just make up numbers. Well, you can. People are doing it. People are doing it actively right now. Jaylen Waddle was really productive. Not when you compare him to his teammates. Not when you compare him to his conference mates. Not when you compare him to past players who have gone on to do well in the NFL. He was less productive than the lowest producing players who ever had a top 12 season in the NFL. Could there be context affecting those numbers? Yeah, I actually, again, I'm not going to ding. I don't not like him at all. I want to like him if he's good. So if he didn't play a full season in 2020, I assume that has something to do with 2020. That's context, but I've also just thrown that year out because he didn't play enough games anyway. What about those other 2 years? And if the only argument is Henry Ruggs was better than him, I don't think that's as positive as you think it is. But if there's more to it than that, like in context he was having injuries, he was struggling, he was growing, whatever, then we go, okay, we can throw those numbers out a little bit more, and now all we have is whatever draft capital he has, which apparently is going to be high, and the tape evaluation. And I'm okay with that. I don't need analytics to win. I need to win. So if there's context, it means we should throw out those 2 seasons where he played multiple games. Well, not throw out, but, look with a grain of salt or whatever. Then I would be very happy to do so. I haven't heard that yet. In fact, what I've heard is he's not as good as Henry Ruggs, therefore he's better than Henry Ruggs. That's essentially the teammate argument right now. You get that right. He's not as good as Henry Ruggs, therefore he's going to be better in the NFL than Henry Ruggs has been. That's it translated into a sentence. If he's good, I want to know, but you have to stop. You don't have to stop, fictional person. You can do whatever you want. Me and you watching the video, we're just trying to make better draft picks, right? It's not going to help us. We have to go listen to Zach. We have to go listen to Nick Whalen. We have to go listen to Travis May and everyone who is good at and has practice and experience with evaluating players through tape. His numbers aren't good, he'll be a lower odds bet. Hopefully his draft capital, because he is from the SEC West, he is probably going to get better draft capital than his numbers justify, because that's what the NFL do. The NFL going to do what the NFL going to do. I'm fine with that, but I want to know more about this tape. That's what's left. That's what's left, because his numbers don't exist. Either his numbers are fake, or they're very bad compared to even the lowest level producer that ever entered the NFL. That's it. I don't want to make up fake numbers I can't prove have extra value for evaluating prospects, because I don't care. They can go do that. I don't. Good luck. I just want to make better draft picks, and that does not help me do it. So have fun, I guess. I want to talk more to Zach about him. I want to talk more to people who actually have some information about the player, instead of information where literally plucking out of thin air for no good reason, because there's no evidence to suggest that that's a thing we should do. But obviously, yeah, I hear you already. If you want to make a better draft pick, Jaylen Waddle could be it. His statistical profile do not show, which means he's going to be lower about as bet, which is where we get to over who, though. So say everyone's drafted in the first round. That's what my ranks are basically based on right now. If you go look at my ranks, and I have them very low. I see most players, I would take that bet if they all have first round draft capital. They won't, however. So if he has first round draft capital, the equation or the decision becomes, how far do you draft him over Jamar Chase if Jamar Chase has second round draft capital? No, I take Jamar Chase. I take Bateman too. And then that's my top tier of wide receivers. Like an entire round of difference, which I don't think there's going to be between those three, would not sway me to Waddle. But Waddle over Jaylen Wallace, if Jaylen Waddle has first round draft capital and Jaylen Wallace has third round draft capital, yeah. But I don't really need to speculate on that too hard. Just to give you an idea, I threw out some examples there, but we're going to know their draft capital before we have to draft, hopefully, right? Get in a good league. And so we don't have to speculate on it too much, but that will become the balance. How high do you draft a player with we can't make a good hit rate for? His hit rates look low outside of the conference he's coming from, compared to players with better hit rates with lower draft capital. And that's going to be the balance. Because, again, people who can look at information I cannot through watching tape seem to believe he has a skill set that can translate. So I'm not going to ignore it, and if the NFL gives him draft capital, I'm going to weigh him in. But in terms of his statistical profile, it's just kind of bad. It's not kind of bad. It's very bad. And anyone that says different, good luck to you. Thank you. But I don't need to hear about it. I don't, because you apparently are willing to make up numbers with no proof or reason for it actually matters, except for screaming obviously at me very much. And that's not going to help me make better draft picks. So I don't care. Yeah. I did this in 20 minutes in the first video, by the way, and I think I was more succinct and a little less bitter. But yeah, so at the end of it, the memeing take is going to be Jaylen Waddle sucks. And it's not that I don't know because he didn't play enough. He played 2 years enough, and his numbers don't look good. So he sucks. I guess. Yeah. If you hate me, I hate me too. So we're in the same club. If you don't, I guess thank you. I don't know why. But I really appreciate you checking it out, especially these 40-minute videos. I swear I was getting better, and I had this down to like hopefully this one isn't muted too. I really appreciate it, guys, girls, fantasy players trying to make better draft picks. Appreciate you. And thanks for checking it out. I'll talk to you again in the next one. Hopefully, also not on mute. Bye.
Do you have the time to listen to me?